I'm super excited to have all three of you here, Dr. Connie Colosi, Muriel Milano, and Maurice. I'm going to take back screen share for now, just so that I can, show a screen of all three of you. If you want to share webcam, you're welcome to do so. But I think, Maurice, yours isn't working, so then you'd be sort of left out of that. So maybe we all just decide right now nobody's going to share webcam for now. So Maurice doesn't feel Maurice doesn't feel left out. But I think I'm showing. Yeah, what am I showing on my screen? There we go. So there we can sort of see you in a non-animated way on the screen. So glad to have all of you. And I feel a little bit sheepish as Learning Council. We've lobbed out this new EduJedi dictionary with guidance on another higher level of standards, the digital learning experience standards, and also the new EduJedi instructional design model. And I feel sheepish, Muriel and Maurice, because just looking at the complexity of what you're dealing with and the fact that, Muriel, you're like a one-man band just on the parent support. I can't imagine I can get any time of your attention on that, because wow, like look at everything you're doing. It's just, I'm overwhelmed. So what I want to do is I want to start off this whole discussion hour with just having Dr. Colosi give us a little intro, catch us up a little bit on Pinellas. But before I can do that, Dr. Colosi, I need to show a little video just and make sure that D2L, who I'm honored to have sponsored us today, they're so kind to us, and introduce them for a minute. So hold on just 1 minute, everyone. This is a chance for Muriel and Maurice to take a little drink of water so they can be sharing. Hold on.
Brightspace is a learning management system that makes it easier for you to give each student a more personalized learning experience. And now you can do it with fewer headaches and in less time. It's one platform with a single sign-on to all the tools you need that works on any device and can be used to create a different experience for each grade level. The youngest students can use a portfolio specifically built for non-readers to share what they're learning. As they get older and busier, the activity feed shows them the latest updates to help them keep track of everything that's going on. And no matter what grade your students are in, it's simpler than ever to create lessons and check that content is aligned to standards. You can use materials from publishers, open educational resources, or bring them in directly from Google Drive. The social interface brings it all together in a way that's easy for anyone to use and keeps everyone connected: teachers, students, and their parents. With Brightspace, you'll be able to reach every learner in a way that supports their learning style.
Okay, we have with us Dave Baker, who's representing D2L. Dave, do you want to just say hello to everyone?
Sure, that sounds great, and thank you very much. We're happy to be a part of these great sessions. We've heard a lot about how everyone's adapting to the new normal and how technology is helping them stay afloat. So thank you very much for sharing all these great stories and successes that you're having. And a big thank you to both Doug and Leilani for putting this all together. Thank you very much, and thank you for having us.
Yeah, well, thanks for being with us. All right, so let's move back into having Dr. Colosi kind of catch us up in Pinellas and what's happening there now.
Well, as I've listened these past 2 days, starting with Pasco and Broward and Lee and Orange, and we've just really all been on the same journey. It would have been really helpful on the front end of this if we all could have gotten together and done this conversation on the front end. But we all have taken our knocks and gotten our bruises in the same way and landed in some of the same places. So it's always interesting to me when we end up kind of landing in the same place that others have as well. So our journey is similar. In March, we are a strong Microsoft district. We had the Teams platform. That's what we could roll out in a week. And I think Muriel makes a fine point that, we're the preparation, the things that we were allowed to do were based on what we had already done and had in place. So we had teams in place, and that's how we delivered our instruction. And you know, ups and downs, good or bad, that's where we were. We realized through that we needed a stronger learning management system, and moved into Canvas as we came into this school year. Our percentages were really similar to what these other districts have reported. We had about 60% of our students come back face to face, and about 37% came with our district My PCS online. So that's, they stayed assigned to their own schools and their own teachers. The teachers, many of them began to do simultaneous teaching, which obviously was a big challenge and stressor. We had about 3% go with our traditional or our normal Pinellas virtual school. And then yesterday we came down to, yesterday was the start of our second quarter. So those commitments on where they wanted to attend were for first quarter. They had a chance to re-up or redecide for second quarter. And about 17,000 of our total 95,000 students came back in. So these are students that were out for 9 weeks, and then starting yesterday they returned. And in many of those classes, most of those classes, they were able to return to being face-to-face with the teacher that they had been online with. And so I think that gave us some stability in a really unstable time. So we're down to about now, I think we have maybe 25% of our kids at home heading into this second quarter.
Okay, great. I like the comment about the stability part, because we've heard that from a lot of districts across the United States where they just try to create some continuity and some familiarity. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's launch into a sort of a first series of questions for you guys. You know, you both have a lot of digital resources, and you both have designed these big master constructs with all the options and the training and getting everybody on board with everything. And while, you know, while the train is going down the tracks, so to speak, have you seen the start of a mutation in terms of the actual instruction? So it maybe teachers are starting to see they don't need to do lecture style all the time, and or are you even requiring it? I don't recall how much time you're allowing or are requiring, or if you're even stepping into that mess. Muriel, do you want to answer first?
Sure. So in Orange County, we are doing, I think Dr. Colosi called it simultaneous instruction. I like to think of, some days I call it hybrid, some days I call it tandem, some days I call it tightrope walking, but our teachers are teaching face-to-face students and at-home students sometimes at the same time. And so we are using the same bell-to-bell method, meaning that our teachers are teaching the same number of minutes they would have taught before. We have begun to see a shift. In the spring, I think the hardest piece of distance learning was that it was primarily asynchronous. And while that worked okay for secondary, it was a real struggle for elementary school. So the first month or so of this school year, I think everyone was truly in survival mode. If you could manage to get 9 to 18 9-year-olds on a Zoom call or whatever you were doing first thing in the morning, whole group instruction was kind of all you could imagine. But as we moved into September and now October, we've started to see our teachers doing a lot more creative things. We have had a lot of success with breakout rooms in Teams and Canvas conferences or Big Blue Button. Our teachers are using the rotational model in elementary school, even online, which is really exciting. And I think they've taken some risks there. We've also seen our secondary teachers, I think, really begin to realize that if they don't always have to have kids sit online for 45 straight minutes just to be there. And so I think they're looking at flipped instruction. They've also looked, I think, more heavily at what independent work looks like and what the role of teacher monitoring is, and begun to build out synchronous and asynchronous structures inside of Canvas for independent work. So I'm excited and really proud of what they've accomplished. But I mean, I think transparently, I can't imagine any of us on the call would say that the teaching happening right now is necessarily the highest quality, because there are so many barriers and such a high stress level. But I think that teachers are doing an amazing job in the instructional design and planning, considering the barriers that they're working through. I mean, if you've ever actually seen kindergartners learn how to read on an iPad from home in a pandemic, you're pretty close to witnessing a miracle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just the change in form and structure that is so alien, and it just sort of discombobulates everybody along the way. All right, so we also, just as a little heads up, Maurice, I'm coming back over to you next, and then to Dr. Closey again. Just so you know, we have some Puerto Ricans on the line today. So Puerto Rico joined with our Florida promotion to be on this particular webinar, and they're looking up to you guys. So, you know, maybe you can answer from the direction of, you know, setting the good example kind of a thing.
Yeah, so I think just overall, as Mariel was sharing some of the things that we've seen and teachers doing, from the administrative perspective, for example, one of the things that we saw almost immediately was a lot of concern and a lot of work being done by administrators to make sure that they could still effectively help their teachers as they were interacting inside of this new virtual space. They wanted to make sure that the students inside the classroom were still receiving, for example, whether it was one-to-one or small group instruction as needed, and that they would get opportunities to, whether it was get additional enrichment or support. And so we had a lot of high interest in really understanding the tools that were available to allow us to do that. We, as a digital learning team, we worked with our curriculum counterparts to create a document that really focused on looking at the instructional resources that we had, the digital resources that we had, and we created a document that said, here are the 35 instructional resources that when you're looking to really increase collaboration and inside of the digital space that could be used by our teachers. And I think that was really helpful to schools for them to be able to get that and be able to understand that even though this was a new medium, that it did not have to be just simply the teacher talking or the students providing feedback through these kind of set things that were built into the system, that there were definitely options that were available. And you know, that collaboration and then the work done to kind of communicate that out, I think was really helpful in folks realizing that some of the key communication pieces and collaboration pieces were not necessarily now just gone because they were digital, but they just took a different form.
Good. Okay, good. Thank you. Same question over to you, Connie. What are you seeing in terms of mutation of practice?
Well, I think we do see it happening. I think that, you know, of course, the very first thing was we all have to survive this, and at the district level, you know, we really thought about what we can do to support the teachers. You know, as I mentioned, Canvas was brand new to everybody at the get-go, and that was challenging, but we did. And you know, Orange has been great mentors for us, and been generous with letting us get on a call and ask some questions. Within Canvas, we were able to create our own resource center, and another platform that we took on district-wide was Nearpod, and through that, our whole teaching and learning team, the instructional staff developers, their job became to publish these lessons and get them into our resource center so that teachers could pull them in. So we didn't have teachers having to think all of this stuff up. Now they could take them and morph them into what they wanted if they wanted to change them, or they could take them and use them as is. And they provided an instructional model for them to follow. And then I think as some people took that as a jump off point and have just really flown and done amazing things. And as you can imagine, there's others that have continued to struggle. But the real, I think the thing that we're excited about is that, and prior to this, I'll mention that we had not had any interest in becoming one-to-one in terms of devices. But after March and coming into the summer, that commitment was made. And so we've had a large influx of devices. So as we come back into our brick and mortar buildings, we're going to be coming back in with phasing in a one-to-one with a strong LMS, with all these digital skills that we have learned. And, you know, we're not going to go back. I mean, the Pandora's box is opened, and in a way that never could have been opened if we didn't have to open it. And, you know, we're really excited now about continuing to work with our traditional teaching and learning curriculum teams and helping them understand how to leverage the technology beyond just using a cool tool, but to really impact the creativity and the research, and, you know, moving into those higher level, using the technology to move us into those higher level learning platforms.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, and so I want to take this in a little bit of a different direction, and that is, you know, we have a moment here where a lot of schools have taken what they were doing in time and space use in brick and mortar and put it online.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a lot of stories, this is not working. It's too much time on live meetings and all these other kinds of things. So, you know, sometimes you have to just go, right? And so it's all great because learning is happening. I really want to celebrate the fact that, you know, 20 years ago, if we would have had this pandemic, we would be, you know, stuck without a sail and dead of the ocean, right? Like no way to get there from here. But we do have a moment where we've started to see a mutation, and it may be permanent. Like you said, we're not going back. So we have some professional responsibilities to watch and learn as well. So coming back to you, Mariel, what are you learning along the way in terms of maybe some ideas that have popped into your mind about sort of like the next level of mutation?
So I mean, I guess there's two big things that I know I keep talking about with Maurice, and I guess I could capture them. Well, I guess I'll say three. The first one would be parents as partners. I think we've talked that game for a long time in education, but remote learning really forces you to live that. And I have 4 children myself. So, you know, for me, having seen remote learning from both sides has been, you know, really eye-opening. And, you know, being able to arm and truly engage our parents in that process and understand that our responsibilities for training truly go beyond teachers, but really extend into the home, I think has been a huge lesson learned. In terms of mutation, however, I think that one of the things that we've seen is scale, right? And I think Maurice has kind of talked about it, whether you have 10,000 students, 96,000 students, or 200,000 students, I think the scale of change can be very challenging to manage, and especially when you get to these really innovative practices. So I think really looking at how we can be nimble and incorporating some of these new and exciting things teachers are doing into our curriculum documents in a quicker way is important for us to take into the future. And probably the third thing I would say is that we have teachers who I think have proven to us and done so in a really public way because they were forced to, right? That they're doing amazing things like project-based learning and escape rooms and all of these things that we kind of heard about in pockets but didn't have a great way to scale. And so I think some of the things that Maurice is doing, for example, with PBS, where we were able to partner with our local PBS station and create a channel and get a handful of really rock star early childhood teachers to teach in this super dynamic way on TV, has really opened that door for us to be able to look at and scale those super engaging practices to teachers who might not have had a way to see that before without having to bring them to a traditional training or that kind of setting. So I would say those are kind of the three big things for me: the parents as partners, scaling support, and really capitalizing and capturing all the innovation that's happening and being able to share it so that our teachers that need to see it can.
I like that. And Maurice, what would be your response to that? What are you watching and what are you learning from?
I think the things that I'm really watching and trying to learn is, and this kind of goes in a little bit into what Mariel was talking about, and it's this piece around really understanding how communication is working now in this new environment. When we look at the way that communication was traditionally done before the pandemic, a lot of it was through mediums that we could control as a district, meaning that it would either be the teacher sending something home with the student inside of their planner or in an email or something else like that, or the principal sending things out through an official channel. And what we've seen now is that you've had this massive shift where, especially during the spring where no one was on campus, all of a sudden everyone was using kind of the same communication channel. And what happens, as we've seen with all these places where you have the Twitters and the Facebooks of the world and everything else, is that you do get this really great ability to kind of reach out to folks, but you also have this flattening of that communication, the ability of the end user to really look at that communication and understand its authenticity, meaning that you could have someone who is from the district office is sharing something that's out, and then because it just is flattened and looks exactly the same as the next email that's coming out from someone else, someone could say something that is different and it could contradict it. And so I think this piece around one, finding multiple ways to communicate your intent and the things that you have, but also having central ways of kind of leading folks back to the official things that the district is trying to share, I think is important. And I think the second part of it is that even with the mass amount of communication that we are doing, we consistently get every week feedback from somewhere that says, no one is telling me anything. And it's this really interesting kind of tension that's there, where what the steps that we've taken to try to solve that, and I think it's something that we're just going to have to learn to do even more, is that not only is the communication streams flattened, but also there is so much communication that's out there where the model that we were using before in presenting information to anyone who we were interacting with, which was, we're going to try to get as much out to you as possible, just overwhelms them. So now we have to really make sure that we are being much more discreet in what we're sharing and that it is actually meaningful to the audience that's receiving it.
Yeah, I love everything that you said. And so the picture that just came out is basically that, you know, with the communication lines being flattened. So they're flattened into a more of a one-dimensionalness, their screen, right? They're not like the dimension you have when you physically walk into a building, and as a teacher, your principal catches your eye and gives you a little, you know, reminder, don't forget blah, 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 as you run by to get to your classroom on time. I understand exactly what you're saying. The loss of dimension is massive, and being able to now direct attention, because digital, the other name for digital is directing attention. Digital equals directing attention. Like, how do you do that? How do you streamline? So I love everything that you just said, and gave me a bunch of ideas for new articles. So you go, Maurice. So coming back to you, Dr. Colosi, I really liked what you said about the fact that what you did is you guys had to throw a lot of devices out there, and you were a little more prescriptive in designing lessons that could then be grabbed and morphed. I wish more school districts were doing that. You can't be prescriptive in any large way, obviously, with teachers too much, because they're the teacher, right? That they would be offended to the nines, right? So talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing and what you're feeling, because I feel like you have you have a big hill to climb here.
Yeah, well, I think the most exciting thing that we have learned going forward in the support of teachers is the way those digital communication platforms, like what we're doing here, such as Teams. I mean, it used to be that if you're going to go and get some kind of professional development, you have to sign up and you have to get off work and you have to drive someplace. And so what we're able to do now, and what we've been able to do starting in March, is just that not exactly any time, but certainly any place, and kind of going from really large, let's try and tell everyone in the district at the same time what's happening, to, and by the way, we crashed live stream trying to do that, so we learned that. But we got to Teams, and good old Teams, they trusted, they supported us. But then, I have a small team of technology integration coordinators, and they have the schools blocked off, and so they each serve about 40 schools. Well, in a traditional, I drive from point A to point B model, they don't get very far. But this ability, and then just all of the collaboration that we can do now, because we've learned how to use these tools, is really exciting for expanding teacher capacity.
Yeah, I agree. We can go, hey, I want to show you something, just share screen, right? Like, or,
yeah.
If you're doing like what, I think you guys have smart boards, if you had like what Promethean was showing earlier in the day, that's awesome. I mean, I think every teacher in America right now wants that in their home. It's going to be very expensive for interactive whiteboards. But it's really a moment of that mutation. So let's move on to the next question. I kind of want to find out what you're thinking is the future. I'm watching what you said earlier, Mariel, about the percentage of time that teachers are doing synchronous based on age. I think that's a perfect mix. I really want to promote that broadly. I'd like to do a whole editorial on it. But where do you think this is going in the future with more of those sort of policy level decisions? Like, how much more order do you feel needs to be brought here? Do you think it's going to be in mutation forever? Because this has created a lot of disarray, right? And so probably at the executive rank, you and Maurice are thinking, okay, we got to lay down these tracks. We got to do this over here. What are your thoughts on that part?
Honestly, I'm a huge fan of structure, and I will tell you, I kind of think we might have hit the threshold for structure on our end. And I say that because I think we have to balance tight and loose, especially given the current situation teachers are in For us, the structure that we really tried to hit on was, this is how you set things up from a technical perspective. We put out a guide for hybrid. We made sure every technology person had walked classrooms to make sure things were set up okay just recently. We really hit hard on that part of the structure. And then we hit hard on, you need to use these platforms so that our parents aren't logging into 72 different platforms a day. And I think that was helpful. But from there, in a face-to-face environment, I think I would have pushed harder for more structure on how time was being used. But in a hybrid environment, I really think that giving more autonomy makes sense, because a lot of our teachers are at home with their own children at the same time. And so I think we have to, both honor their professionalism and their ability to make decisions, and also, really be considerate and empathetic. Moving forward, however, I think when we all come back to school, I think just looking at what I would consider compassionate accountability structures, where we're really looking at how and who is using the platforms and how we can truly provide support for helping people make the right connections, versus sometimes I think what comes across is just a mandate to use things a certain amount of times, which I don't think is the end goal. I'm sure Maurice has more to add there. He has lots of good ideas in this area.
Yeah, go ahead, Maurice.
No, I think just piggybacking off of the things that Mariela was saying, when we're really looking towards the future and trying to think about the ways that we could see the resources and tools that are out there right now being used, how they can continue to be used. I think one is definitely, and Mariela kind of said this, is when you look at that overall kind of life cycle of a product and how it's used, not only from the standpoint of in the current situation, but also the support that can be provided, and also the different environments where that product is being used. If you become too prescriptive, then you definitely will run into headwinds that you never expected. We've had to provide support for password resets and for getting on platforms for kids who were in trucks doing cross-country trips with their parents, and trying to connect from a hotspot and things like that. And so if you have things where you're saying like the kid must be doing this or must be doing that, suddenly the unintended consequences become very large very quickly. So really it becomes about, where can you provide some really robust platforms for students and for teachers to do all the things that they need to do in an environment that provides what they need. And then the second piece is, what are the things that we can do at scale to really reduce some of the work that comes along with the transition to digital? So by that, I mean, how do we provide easier access to resources, going into things like making it where you have to create usernames and passwords, where you don't have to go in and set up your classes, or if your kids are doing grades in one environment, that those grades are being automatically brought over into the grade book, and really just trying to make sure that we take some of these kind of like functional pieces that folks spend a lot of time doing in these different environments and making them just the things of the past that they don't have to think about. So they're really spending their time on creativity and spending their time on really expanding the opportunities for the students in the classroom. And so, we've tried to work really hard on doing those kinds of integrations. And I think the final piece is that the data that is now being generated is just massive by students. And, there's this kind of tug that's there in between what we could potentially do in education with that data. And I think, quite honestly, there are folks outside of education that are just salivating thinking about that, and we have to be careful of what, when they start coming in. But even internally, what we can do with that, where if we're building the resources that would allow us, for example, to look at assessment data and say, we see kids struggling in this area, or look at our scope and sequence and say, we know that this is an area that's coming up that our kids have traditionally struggled with, and potentially provide a course or optional enrichment opportunity inside of our learning management system, for example, for just kids who are enrolled inside of that course or inside that area. I think it's also just starting to really take advantage of some of those pieces. So, I like to think of it almost as like personalization at scale, where we can really use some of these larger data structures and things that we're getting now to make things actually feel that they're actually smaller and more individualized for our teachers and our students.
Yeah, I like what you said there. Yeah. Yeah, because that's been the work that we've been working on all summer, is the Learning Council EduJet. I've been working on how do you auto cohort, auto trigger the intersection with the live teaching, being that might be the pinnacle that everything's sort of coalescing towards. So we've been working on all that algorithmic inference that will be built in someday, we hope. All right, so back to you, Dr. Colosi, and just to sort of reset, the posture of central office setting the table, saying here's all your Thanksgiving menu items of technology versus more prescriptiveness. What's your take on what new policy directions that will be needed or maybe not needed?
Well, I think we always talk about, the wild, wild west of all the applications and a process to keep, and Maurice was talking about the data that's out there. And so if teachers have too much freedom, they're out there leaving the doors open. And we've had some situations within teams where we've had to work on tightening up our the back door there for kids. So, I think, in terms of policy, it's teachers really understanding the privacy concerns, teachers understanding the unbelievable amount of resource that the district is paying for them to have, that they really don't need to go out and be, you mentioned this a lot, Leilani, teachers spending all this time out there researching all their things. They don't need to, we bought it for them. We're very fortunate. So in terms of structure, we want to make sure that in the end, the kids are coming away with the learning that we want them to have. When we have a professional teacher that has a deep understanding of the Florida standards and how to present those, we can just kind of open the door and let them go do their thing. But, with teacher turnover, we have a lot of kind of, I guess I'd call it paint by numbers. And, it's not a script, but you kind of give it to them so that they can, set them up for success in helping their kids be successful. So we're spending a lot of time thinking about, how do we leverage this technology for student success? And that's kind of our next set of professional development that we're going to be working on for not only our teachers, but also our content specialists, in the broader teaching and learning department.
Okay, awesome. And then I'm going to give you guys all a final fun question, 2 parts. Number 1, if you could have any new technology, doesn't matter cost, brought in, what would it be? And remember, there's new stuff on the scene, like, avatar, speaking, animation, make your own comic book with animation kind of stuff out there. And then the second part is, what are you looking forward to when things are quote unquote a little bit more normal? Okay, so Muriel, you go first. Part 1, what's your dream list? And part 2, what are you looking forward to?
My dream list. I think my dream list would be really probably simpler than yours. I think that I would love to see us have truly interactive spaces and interactive walls in our early childhood spaces. I think a lot could be done with interactive tables that hasn't been truly explored in a robust way by vendors. I am excited about our recent investment in additional classroom cameras and bases and things like that that can be used for bug in ear coaching, and really being used so that there isn't necessarily a reason to be absent. It can really continue beyond the pandemic. So I'm really excited about that. And truly, I think in my perfect world, I would love to see a truly built out makerspace in every school that combines technical and non-technical elements and really provides a space for kids to create.
Yeah, I love that. I love that vision. And I love that you're thinking about the little kids.
Oh, well, that's my favorite.
Yeah, my favorite too. Okay, so Maurice, 2 parts, dream list. What do you want to have happen? What would you like when normal is sort of normal, maybe?
I think I'll start off first with what I'd like to see when things, hopefully kind of settle down and get back to whatever our new normal is going to be, is that we know that folks are using a lot of these platforms and resources also underneath high stress. Quite honestly, I hope that they don't connect those feelings of stress when things kind of go down to the platforms and resources that they're using, and that as they're looking at continuing to use and learn about these things, they're doing it because they actually saw really positive benefits to what they were doing when they had to use it, and not just because they're doing it now out of fear that they're going to have to use it again. Because I think there's some really great things that are happening out there, but it's not 100% happening because folks are like, you know what, I'm in this situation, so I'm just going to make just see how much I can do. Some of it is just happening. The great things that are happening out of stress and tension. So I hope folks realize they can take a step back and realize that they really are doing some really great instructional and educational things, and they can continue that. And then I think the piece that I look at also, and it kind of piggybacks and it wraps us back around to that communication side. And it may seem simple, but I do think it would make a big difference. A lot of us in a lot of our districts and other places, we end up with folks that become really the experts, the go-to folks for questions or things that folks need to know. But what ends up happening is that the scale that ends up happening when, instead of having just 10 or 20 people asking the question, you maybe have 300 to 500 people asking the question in one day. That scale just becomes really massive to deal with. I wish that we could find some way to just organically build in, the Google for Education that is not the productivity suite, but the Google for Education that is the search engine that allows you within a specific organization for someone to go in and just put in that search term or whatever it is, and really immediately find what they're looking for, whether it's inside of a website or it's inside of Canvas or it's inside wherever else. Because I think lessening that gap that exists right now in between the need for information and the places you find it is one of the things that ends up just eating up a lot of time and then creating a lot of stress for folks.
Yeah, walled garden search. I think ClassLink is doing that within ClassLink, but I don't know how deep they go inside an LMS. So I I completely concur with you. That's a big deal. Okay, Connie, what is your, viewpoint on those two things? Your dream technologies, and then, what's normal going to be like?
Well, I'm relating a lot to what some of the things Maurice mentioned. I am not ready for more technology right now. My dream, if unlimited funding, unlimited time, would be that we would have the time to build the confidence, the efficacy, the why, the understanding of our instructional staff in using all of the things that we currently do have available to us, and making that just-in-time information available, similar to what Maurice was mentioning. In fact, we're starting to play now with Power Agent bots from Microsoft to begin to build out something that might begin to, when they want to know it. We have, it's not as extensive as yours, but we've been maintaining a blog, and we update it. We have our little videos, and we have all kinds of stuff there. And people call and they ask us a question, and we say, well, it's on the blog. And that's not helpful to them, because when they get to the blog, they have to figure out where on the blog. And so we want to be able to get that just-in-time information that people want to know, and really have teachers understand how exciting learning can be by deploying these things. That'd be my dream.
Yeah. So in both of those, what I'm hearing is more of a consumer level responsiveness, which takes a while to evolve to. So I get that. And then John Ahrens, who's a board member out in St. Vrain, Colorado, he made this comment. He said, I think we need cloud space, sharing without limitations, which I think all of you guys agree with. And he also said we need to identify the best of the best, increase student understanding, do away with the lags, and help with the PD with teachers. So thank you, John. I think I'm going to be wrapping up here. I've kept you guys almost at an hour now, and I know how precious your time is because you are super duper executives. So I'm just sending you a big giant thank you hug in the virtual universe. And, hoping that you carry on and that you have the strength to continue to lead and really be there for everyone. I know that's a challenge even at the executive, right? The loneliest place of all is the top, in terms of everybody's leaning on you. You're supposed to have all the answers, and I'm proud of all of you. So thank you, Dr. Colosi, for being with us today. And Muriel Milano, bless you, bless all your beautiful children. And Maurice, can I say your last name one time? I want to make sure I'm saying it right. Dragon, am I right?
Yeah, just like the flying animal, dragon, just with two G's.
I love it. It's a very cool name. It's super cool. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So this recording will be coming out as soon as we can get it edited and sent out to our whole national audience so they can learn from the wisdom of you three. But thank you again. I'm going to be wrapping up here.
Thank you.
So this is our big thank you for being with us today. And we didn't really have time for more questions because we kept everybody for an hour. So next time we're in Florida, I think it will be physical. We're hoping to hit Muriel and Maurice up to come physically back in the fall of 2021. We can't do that anywhere in the spring for all of our spring cities and regions, but we're hoping to maybe even actually see you in real person next time we come into Florida in the fall. But thank all of you, and good luck, everyone. I know like I said, we've had Puerto Rico on here. Good luck, Puerto Rico. Good luck, Colorado. Thank you all from Florida, and see you next time we do another virtual event. Don't forget to volunteer as an Edu Jedi for any of our meetings that you can. And thanks for following Learning Council. Goodbye, everyone.